Hello to everyone who is watching this. My name is Lesya. I'll be given a little module on time management. I think as chairs, we've all heard about this and we had it on trainings and we understand why it's so crucial, so I won't go into that. I will try to keep it as short and simple as possible, just basically giving some practical life hacks and showing different ways of time managing yourself. And I have divided it into 3 categories. The first one is long-term time management, so for a whole session or for the whole day. The second one will be short-term, which will focus on tasks that require from 20 minutes to an hour, like the elements of the session. And the third one will be few things, few advices on what to do in stressful situations when you're running out of time and you don't know what to do. So yeah, I'll start with the first one. The one that's I think the most common is the time chronology one, where you write it on a flip chart. Why it's used is because it helps you to visualize time for yourself and also to show your delegates how much time you have left, and then it's easier for them to work, I think, as for every person, if they know time a little bit. So how it works, basically you write out a plan, you consider the schedule that the organizers give you, and let's say you have 7 hours of team building and then 10 hours of committee work, and you plan it in the beginning, and then for example this is the second or third day, so you start with finishing team building, you have an hour for this, then you have 2 hours for transition, then for example you write golden rules, or then you have lunch, and etc. Right? So what people do, I've seen this in trainings and I've seen also my colleague chairs doing it, they have 2 post-its, one says time, another one says your committee name. So the time, for example, you planned it, it would be perfect if you finish transition at 12, so transition from team building to committee work, but it's now 12 and your committee is still not done with the transition. So it helps you to see how far behind are you, and it also helps the committee to adjust, and even, for example, if you don't say anything, I think it worked for me. Then in my committee we were behind time, and then my delegates were like, oh, look at the schedule, we're not doing this, so they speed up, and you don't even have to do anything, so it's very helpful, and then you just move forward, right? Another one that I use personally is the one where you draw a line and you have the boxes to fill in, and it's very similar to the previous one, but still. So let's say you do brainstorming for 1.5 hours, and then whenever you are done, your delegates take the marker and they fill in this little box, and so they can see the progress. Okay, let me do it with another marker so that you can see. So the first part is done, and you can see what time you have to be done. And for example, if they finish at 10:45, then they know they have less time for, let's say, grouping, right? So then it also helps you to see, yeah, as I said, to see the progress. But it's not as stressful as the first one, and you can still adjust. One important thing is to have buffer time, as I mentioned here. So if you create a plan for the day, you have to leave some time, 30-40 minutes, depending on what you think it might be, because during the committee work we never know how will brainstorming go or how will grouping go. Will it take 20 minutes or will it take 45 or will it take up to an hour? You can roughly plan it, but if you plan it minute by minute, then probably you're gonna fail. So yeah, buffer time is very important. I don't know, it depends on the chair if they give fake deadlines to the delegates. I personally never do it because I think that we should be on the same page, and if they finish later, they also see it, and I honestly prefer to be honest with my delegates, but it depends on you. You can also, for example, write a schedule for your delegates. Let's say you have to finish at 5:15, but practically you have to finish at 5:45, so you don't have to write buffer time on the schedule, but always keep it in mind because it's usually very useful. You can also have, as for delegates, for example, to fill in the boxes, You can have a timekeeper, so it's you appoint one person from the committee. Usually it might be the most active one, and you want to keep them busy with something so they don't distract everyone else, you know, the energy bomb people. And then they feel the responsibility, and they just fill in the time, and then they remind everyone of time, and then, you know, it's very useful both for the committee and for you. Or also you can have the person who is least included and put them, you know, in the position where they matter. And so, yeah, just the timekeeper is a really cool thing to do. Okay, now we'll move to the short-term time management. What I mean by that is, for example, when you have brainstorming and you ask them, okay, how much time do you need for brainstorming? And they say, let's say 30 minutes. And then you don't want to remind them every time. You don't want to yell, okay, guys, you have like 15 minutes left, because it will probably distract them. So these are some ways to avoid that. So the first one, it looks absolutely the same as the thing that I show you on the long-term thing. On the long-term schedule. You can fill in, for example, you have, let's say, 15 minutes left, and every 5 minutes you just write it on the board and you just cross this one out so they can see. You don't even have to explain anything usually. You just you know, cross it out, and they see, oh, okay, we have this much time left. Also, it's the same with circles. You can just, you know, fill in the circles every 2 minutes, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it depends on you. So if you gave them, like, for example, 40 minutes, each one means 10 minutes, so you don't have to yell. Also, what I've seen other chairs using was Post-its. They just, you know, if the committee is working at the table and you don't want to interrupt them, you just write Post-it and you say 10 minutes left, for example, and you just put it there quietly, and you leave, and they see the time. Also, timer. If you have a computer in the room, or you have a phone, you just put it in front of them and you can say, okay, they can see how much time is left. And again, you can come back to a timekeeper and you can say, okay, you're responsible for this. In 30 minutes, you guys have to be done with this. And the last thing I was talking about was the stressful situation. Sometimes it happens that you didn't plan it correctly, or I don't know, the grouping and brainstorming, it took so long that you're way behind schedule, like 2 hours behind schedule. Buffer time is to prevent this, but if it doesn't work, there are 2 ways that I've used before, maybe there are more. You can add this in comments or reply to my video. But for example, what I did was when you were writing OCs or you were phrasing OCs, and you know, it takes too long for them to agree on something, and it takes them 20 minutes for each OC, and you have like 15. Then you can have time for example, we say 1 minute for each OC, and then they try to hurry up, and then they get into the mood, and then it takes 15 minutes instead of 3 hours. So that's what worked with me. And then the other way you can do it, if you don't want to, you know, to put pressure on each one because you are more into quality than quantity. Then you can say, okay guys, I'm leaving the room for 10-15 minutes. When I come back, it has to be done because we don't have any more time. And then they feel more responsible for it because the responsibility is not on the chair anymore, it's more on the delegates. And so they usually finish up very quickly. And then when you come back, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but then you can give some more time also. So you just leave the room. You say, yeah, you have 10 minutes. When I come back, it has to be done, and so it usually works. So yeah, I think this is all I had to say. Again, if you had something to add, maybe you've had different tricks, something else other than I said, please be welcome to answer to the video in Slack or in YouTube. And yeah, I hope it was helpful.